All right, welcome everyone to the February chapter meeting of San Fernando Valley Climate Reality. I'm so glad that you could join us here tonight with our special guest from LA Sanitation. Tonight we have Jennifer Pinkerton, a true expert who has been doing waste reduction for decades, literally decades. She's going to tell us all about what is new with LA Sanitation. So first, we're going to do our chapter business. And I'd like to begin with our land acknowledgement. We always like to start things off that way. Giving our land acknowledgement tonight is going to be Tara Sitzer. And Tara, you might know if you have ever seen one of the beautiful flyers for our meetings. Tara designs those because she is our graphic design coordinator. You might not know that she's also a writer with a series of children's picture books that are currently in production that focus on climate issues. So she is putting her graphic design skills to work in multiple ways supporting the climate effort. Tara, would you please
Thank you.
read the land acknowledgement for us?
Yes, thank you, Sharon. A land acknowledgement is a formal statement that recognizes and respects Indigenous peoples as stewards of this land and the enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous peoples and their traditional territories. It acknowledges the history that has brought us to reside on this land, the colonialism that is present in our current systems, and calls on us to be mindful of our own present participation in it. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Tongva, Kish, Tataviam, and Chumash tribes.
Thank you, Tara. That somehow feels more relevant than ever these days. Next, I would like to hand things over to Vivian Deutsch, who is our outreach coordinator, and she will tell you a little bit about how to join our chapter or the larger climate reality organization, which is actually worldwide. Vivian, would you unmute and give us a brief bit of info about that?
Okay, first of all, I want to welcome everybody. And if you're new, a special welcome. So once you're in our meetings, you're on our email list. But there's a way to join officially as member of our chapter. A lot of people on the line have already done that. But if you have never done that, you go to the Climate Reality site. I don't have the link handy. Sharon, if you have it handy or
Yep, it's in the chat there.
Perfect. Thank you. So you go to this link and you fill out the form and you say that you're joining the San Fernando Valley chapter. And then you are not only on our email list and get to come to our meetings, but you are connected to the larger Climate Reality organization, which is worldwide and does amazing things. And you have visibility to even more things that you can do. And when there are trainings, if you have not been in our leadership training, you will also get information about how you can go and get trained. We on the leadership team have all done that training. It's absolutely amazing. So it is definitely worthwhile to become a member of our chapter officially through the larger Climate Reality. And I invite you to do that if you haven't done it already.
Thank you, Vivian. Appreciate that. At this point, I think we are ready to enjoy some news from LA Sanitation. So I am going to turn this over to Diana to introduce our guest speaker.
There we go. Well, some of you might recognize Jennifer because this is not the first time that she has been with us to share what she knows. Jennifer is the Environmental Affairs Officer for Los Angeles Department of Sanitation. She's worked in the field of recycling and solid waste for 30 years. She's an authority on how cities are currently managing waste. She previously worked with Californians Against Waste and has now been with LA Sanitation for the past decade. During her time at LA San, she wrote the City of LA's plastic pollution policy, report and drafted the plastic straws and foodware accessories upon request ordinance. So thank you for that. She expanded the single-use plastic bag ban and enacted the citywide styrofoam ban. She's now focused on LA's zero waste ordinance. So Jennifer, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Can you hear me? Okay, I apologize. Nothing fancy, very bare bones PowerPoint presentation. I wish I had better news. In general, trends are not going, I'll pull this up. Trends are not going in the right direction. We're still generating more trash. Recycling rates are going down, not up. It's difficult out there. So against that background, then we've got the added pressures from the fires, the recent catastrophes. We're making progress and we're not making progress at the same time. Still a lot of single-use disposable items in use, as you know. Food waste, organics is still a problem. Food packaging, in my mind, is very problematic. Too much of it is designed for single use or it's not recyclable. So we're tackling these things, but I think it's going to be a bit of a slog. One good thing on the horizon is SB 54, as you know, was adopted, but it's got quite a long glide path until it becomes effective. But that is the state legislation that says different types of packaging have to achieve a certain recycling rate, or they can no longer be used in the state, which is great. So let me just jump in. I am focusing on zero waste primarily these days. We've had an ordinance on the books for 3 years now. Two major components. Every city department was supposed to write a plan on how they would achieve zero waste. And we asked them to focus on organics because of SB 13.3, climate change, and also to look at any unique waste, such as libraries generate about 1 million used books a year. Different departments have different types of special waste. LADWP used to purchase these custom-made PET balls that they floated on the reservoirs before they put permanent covers in. So there are a lot of unique wastes out there that are kind of problematic as far as recycling. The events portion of the zero waste ordinance, to me, was the most exciting part. I just went to events, looked at the waste that was being generated, just kind of what can be done better, what can we ban, what should we mandate. And I just came out with this list of products that you'll see here, or topics rather. Foodware obviously is a big concern. There's still a lot of single-use disposable foodware. Surplus food's a problem. Food waste. We typically weren't collecting food waste at events where sanitation provides bin services. Drinking water and plastic bottles are totally unnecessary these days. LAX, as you know, banned those, 3 years, 4 years now? And banned plastic bags too. So if you've got an event, community event that's held on city property or in a city facility, it's supposed to be complying with these mandates. And one thing the city was not doing, we were not promoting AB 619, which allows you to let restaurants or food vendors decide if they'll let their customers bring their own reusable, durable food or beverage containers. And I'm like, that's the biggest cost savings potential for restaurants. It's every container you don't have to purchase to provide to somebody. So I'm still a little mystified why restaurants aren't jumping on board. Personally, I don't think LA County did a very good job of promoting AB 619. They didn't talk about it for years after it was adopted because that was during the pandemic. And I think they were just afraid people would get confused or get an uproar over it. But I wish there were a lot more focus on this now. And I just learned from David Harone. I'm sure many of you know David in CD3 in Los Angeles. He's working with State Senator Sasha Perez, and apparently she's got a zero waste package that she's putting together too. Let me go back 1 second. Very little progress is made on the events end of this. We have about 15 city departments that permit, coordinate events or involved in events in some way. Say, for example, Streets LA, Bureau of Street Services permits on every parade, LA Marathon, Texas Soul, all these events. Not a single one of those departments has yet modified their websites or their permit forms or event forms to reflect the fact that we've got a zero waste ordinance on the book. So vendors don't know about it. So nothing's happening in this regard at all. We do have a couple other projects where we're getting some good experience and data under our belts. We set up a food waste collection pilot program at City Hall and Public Works Building last year. So we thought we'd make the council members all walk the talk. So we're collecting food waste from every council office and then from the Board of Public Works offices. It's going pretty well, but we do still see food waste in the regular trash bins. So we're stepping up our outreach to try to counter that. We don't have a full complement of staff in buildings on a full-time basis, so the statistics may look a little light, just over 1 ton of food waste collected for City Hall, about half a ton at Public Works Building. But on a given day, these buildings may be occupied 20 to 30%. It's really interesting. Logistics can be a big problem. It seems very straightforward, but we've got 3 different entities involved. Custodians are the only employees that go in to provide services, go into every single office every single day. So they are the only ones that could possibly collect the food waste. We don't want food waste left overnight in any of the offices. So we had to basically reach a tentative agreement with the department that oversees the custodians. Will you participate in this pilot program? Going forward, that's something we'd probably have to work out with unions. It's a different union that represents custodians. And a lot of our custodians in LA actually are contracted custodians. A very low percentage are actually employees. So we'd have to look at our custodial contracts going forward and to add food waste collection into those. So it seems like it should be a simple thing, but it falls to a number of city departments. I have a recycling crew that services all the blue recycling bins in city offices. There are probably 200 to 300 catered events held in City Hall on a given year. We don't actually know how many because there's no database maintained, but we just wanted to find out how much food waste is generated at these events. So my crew, when they're available, they work as bin attendants at catered events. They basically help guide people to the correct bin, put your food waste into the green bin, and your empty bottle into the blue bin. So that, again, that's something that's not on a permanent basis. That type of logistics won't work. We'd have to come up with something else. But we've done, 61 events for over about a year and a half. Haven't collected a whole lot of food waste, but I haven't been to these events. So I don't know if there are a lot of leftovers, unserved edible food that the caterers pack up and take back. That's one of the possibilities. So we're really just out there trying to find out what's going on. And for that reason, we have another pilot project coming up. There's a nonprofit food cycle. It's one of the larger nonprofit food rescue groups in Los Angeles. And I'm hoping this will get kicked off any day, but we're basically paying them a flat fee to go to every catered event at City Hall with to-go boxes ready to pack up any surplus edible food that's left over. Then they will take it and donate it. So this is just kind of a test, is there a lot of leftover food that's available or not? We really don't know, but it'll be good too, because again, getting into City Hall is not the easiest of things. You've got a couple security clearances to go through. So part of this is working out logistics for that as well. Plastics, I did write the report that resulted in the first several ordinances came out of the report, the foodware accessories, the straws, the EPS ban, extension of the single-use plastic bag ban. A new group was set up. So basically, there was a programmatic EIR to examine all the additional policies I recommended. So since October, that group has been working on interacting with restaurants, etc. The council wanted a lot of feedback from restaurants, trade associations, everybody that might be impacted by future ordinances to find out what they think, what are the barriers, what are the impacts. So that's what's going on in the process now. A report should go back to council this summer, June or July, and it should focus on the feasibility of these items that are bullet pointed here. Reusable foodware for dining services. That's one of the things I recommended. This one's a little different. LA County asked for reusable foodware, but only for full service restaurants where someone comes and takes your order at your table. I wrote it so this would apply for any dine-in meal, whether it's a McDonald's or a 4-star restaurant. A mandate for compostable or recyclable single-use takeout containers. Now, I have to tell you, I have reconsidered this. I live in Glendale, and I'm on the Sustainability Commission there, and we're trying to get the council to adopt something similar. I would not allow recyclable containers anymore. When you're looking at a recyclable container, you're generally talking about plastic. And even if it's a number 1, 2, or 5 plastic that are accepted in most cities, the fact is if these containers are not clean, if they're not dry, they're going to get tossed. They're not going to be treated as recyclable materials, so they're going to go in the trash anyway. So if you want to reach out to LA City Council members, I would drop the recyclable entirely. And I would just go with a mandate for compostable foodware, because then the foodware and the food waste goes into one bin. It's one fell swoop. It's easier. And just knowing human behavior, I think my mother was the only person I ever met that washed all her recyclables. So I just don't see that happening. And then the single-use printed cartridge ban, that's something that came from one of the council offices. And another thing they're looking for is a returnable takeout foodware pilot projects. A couple of these are going on in New York, as far as I'm aware. You sign up, it's a subscription service, as far as I understand it. You pay a deposit. And I think the reusables are picked up from you, but there may be drop-off boxes in some places, depending on, the geographic area that's served by one of these companies. So that'll be really interesting to see. I'm thinking they might look at places like Larchmont. You obviously want someplace where people live close by and your foodware is going to travel 10 miles or something. So, and then the last point, since we do want to tackle water and plastic bottles, we have a real need for another method for getting drinking water to people. So the council is directing all departments that have anything to do with water hydrants to say, what can you do, when can you do it, how much would it cost? The General Services Department retrofitted a lot of water fountains in city buildings, put bottle fillers on them, but I don't think those are in parks yet, which is, where they're really needed. So hoping that we'll have more, excuse me, I've got a cat attacking my feet, that bottle fillers will become more widely available in the near future. I think UCLA, I spoke, Bonnie Benson over there, talked to her a couple of years ago, and they were, I think, doing an assessment for that very thing. Okay, for organics recycling, Recycla is the biggest program. It's our franchise commercial services. You have 7 companies that provide trash recycling organic services in 9 different zones in Los Angeles. Each one of those companies is exclusive to the zone. A little less than 60% of all the commercial customers that should have organics collection through Recycla have it. Now, organics is tough. If you're paying any attention, it's very tough. We don't have, buildings were built without space allocations for, a 3-bin system. You may not have common kitchen areas in a large mall, so you may have food waste streams coming out of multiple locations within one building. You may not have chutes. Buildings really just were not designed for this type of thing. Restaurants, I understand it's very stressful industry, and they don't have a lot of extra staff. So actually taking somebody carry food waste to a different location and dump it, there are just lots of little barriers along the way. So the Recycla franchise has put out a contract that's just got approved yesterday with Jacobs Engineering, and I've got arrows to the 2 things they're going to look at is basically how can they beef up organics collection, and also to do an internal assessment of the Recycla management within sanitation. So yeah, it's tough. It's very tough. I live in Glendale. We're pretty much in the same situation. I'm not aware of what's going on in other cities. For organics, it's really difficult, and it's expensive, as you know. Organics, food waste is particularly heavy. One thing I would like to see and encourage, I'd like to see pre-processing equipment all around Los Angeles, whether it's dehydrators that just literally squeeze the water out so the resulting food waste is much lighter. It could be maybe a third the original weight once it goes through that. There are grinders. There's a local company that reps BioNova equipment. It's a Dutch company. They have dehydrators of various sizes, but they have grinders added onto them that chip the material, grind the material into more uniform sizes. So it dehydrates more uniformly. All sorts of options out there. So I would really like to see the city investing in equipment and doing pilot programs all over the place. do one in a mall, do one at the airport, do one in a large office tower, things of that sort, and figure out what are the logistics and what are the barriers, and what's your best option. There's a Beverly Hills hotel that has had a big piece of equipment, pre-processing equipment for years, where the food waste is basically digested and chopped into a sludge, and then it goes down the sewer. But we've heard that there were all sorts of problems, that the hotel had to do a lot of jerry rigging on their own and add extra loops and extra steps into that. But let's get out there and compile all the information that's out there already and find out what works and what doesn't. Food rescue is a really bright spot. I don't know if you've met Michelle Mikesel in our office, who is pretty much in charge of all the food rescue efforts. Great programs. Recycla, since its inception, has collected basically 41,000 tons of food. And they've got about $4.2 million invested in food rescue. And all those funds come from the Recycla haulers. I didn't do the division, but we figure 1.2 pounds per meal. So that's a lot of meals. Michelle was also able to get some grant funds. So she was able to provide transportation for food rescue efforts within certain geographic areas. That resulted, as you can see here, in a lot of food being rescued again. She got 3 micro grants going that have collected over, 1.8 pounds of food. And then the city council recently granted her some money to address gaps in the entire food rescue process. And one of the things she and I always said, it kind of makes no sense. We set up a franchise program so we wouldn't have a hauler who's stationed in the valley picking up food in downtown LA and then turning around, driving it back out to a landfill in the valley. Well, food rescue is unfortunately kind of at that stage. You've got different rescue groups working with different franchise haulers, and we don't have anything that is hub-based. You could have a food rescue group housed in West Los Angeles that's servicing downtown LA. Well, there finally is a physical hub in development where we hope food can be stored overnight, so there's not the time crunch, as far as if you pick up surplus food, it's got a limited lifetime, but hopefully we've got a refrigerator available where this can be stored if it needs to be stored overnight, and where other food related functions can take place. So her program is going great guns. It's really good, and there's still some other areas where it can be expanded, but it's definitely a success story for us. So just briefly on the fire response, we are not in charge. It's the Army Corps of Engineers, the lead agency. The US EPA is out doing what they call the phase 1 environmental assessments, where basically it's like a visual assessment. What's going on? What does the place look like? And then the Army Corps comes in and does a phase 2 assessment, where they're a lot more detailed as far as what are the risks at a given site. Residents can opt out of working with the Army Corps. They can hire their own contractor, and apparently some are doing that because it's probably a much faster process. Because, as you know, the Army Corps is dealing with a very large area. LA City is cooperating with LA County, just still a lot of materials moving, things of that sort. Sanitation, the city, we're providing support services. We're moving cars if they're blocking areas. Our watershed group is making plans to mitigate for rain events, things of that sort. So a lot of moving pieces going on. One thing I have to say, I read in the paper that the requirement for electrification when these homes are rebuilt has been waived. That's really too bad. I understand there's such a need. People want to go back to their homes. But how often do you have an opportunity to do something radically different on such a large area? So I was really disappointed to see that. But I'm like, and it's very ironic to me to put gas back into an area that just burned. Yeah, very disappointed by that. But I know there are other considerations at play. So that's kind of a quick overview. I do want to tell you, Burbank has adopted what LA is considering now. Burbank has already adopted that ordinance for foodware, reusables for dine-in. They govern the takeout, foodware, things of that sort. Glendale's looking at it, but our council here is basically dragging their feet. That's been what we've been involved with plastics ordinances for about 2.5 years now and haven't made a lot of progress. I'm sure many of you might know Dan Brotman. He was formerly mayor in Glendale. He's not, still on the city council now. He and I were talking, and he's going to go talk to the Burbank Airport because, you know, it has an authority that governs it, but they're going to be doing major renovations there. I believe they're in the design phase now. And I said, well, this is perfect. Put it in one central commercial dishwashing facility and just mandate all the first food vendors in the airport use the same reusable foodware. I mean, it's a captive audience, right? I don't go into an airport to buy lunch unless I'm going to get on a flight. So I don't think you'll have a lot of people coming to the airport and taking foodware out. So I'm hoping we can bring that to pass. I think it'd be great. And it turns out it's just one company providing all the food service. So there really isn't the branding need that you might find where you've got a McDonald's versus a Burger King versus a Starbucks. So I hope to be able to report back on some positive advances in that area. I think that'd be really exciting if we get that to happen. So that's it in a nutshell. Thank you again for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jennifer. Oh my gosh, there's so many different fronts that you're fighting this battle on.
Yeah, it's, you know, zero waste is tough because it's largely invisible. It's an upstream practice. You don't have bins sitting around to show you've got a physical program. It's harder to measure, but it's ultimately the most cost-effective way to go about things. You know, the term built environment, I'm saying we should look at the bought environment because everything we buy has an impact on the amount of waste that we generate. And if you are in control of your purchasing, you'll be able to reduce your waste stream significantly. But it's just in a city government, all those pieces are under different departments and everything's very siloed. So it's hard to bring it together. Smaller cities, I think they might have a little easier time with it. Excuse me.
Yeah, I can really see how complex the problem is when you have to attack it from multiple fronts and, you know, it's not clear who has jurisdiction for each of these different departments.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay. So if you have questions for Jennifer, please go ahead and start entering them in the chat as we kind of discuss things here, and we'll get to as many different things as we can. For one thing, I did want to say, yes, it's just madness to think about putting gas lines back into areas that just burned.
Yeah.
You know, this is the perfect time to electrify, right? Which is why we're going to have this discussion on passive house next month and the passive house legislation that's coming this year.
Right.
I understand how desperate people are to rebuild quickly, but there really is an opportunity here to build back better, and we don't want to miss the chance to do it when we can do it from scratch.
And there must be an expert out there who could tell you, does it truly take longer if you want to do the right thing and bury electrical lines versus having them above ground? Is that not still faster than laying gas lines? I don't know, but I would think it would be.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know we're still in the cleanup phase and there's a lot to sort out there, but I am hoping that, you know, we can apply some pressure as things get closer to the rebuilding phase to make sure that it's done in a smart way.
Well, I totally agree. No.
All right. A question from Diana. What can we do to get restaurants to use AB 619?
Yeah, you know, like your little cards you were talking about for polystyrene that Reusable LA has. Have you talked to them about doing an info card about AB 619?
Oh, interesting. So maybe we could be carrying cards that notify them of the regulations.
We've done some really primitive ones here in Glendale, but they're not up on the Glendale Environmental Coalitions. They're not on our website yet for downloading, but that's what I would suggest. Get a little business card size, you know, it's approved by LA County, so they understand this isn't something made up. LA County does have a web page on it.
So what sort of outreach is done to restaurants when something like AB 619 passes to let them know about the new rules?
That's a good question. They have a technical advisory council at the county, and I attend it like once a year for the past 3 or 4 years, and every time was, well, where's your outreach on 619, and never got a response. So I honestly don't know what their dissemination method is. I mean, they have a huge database of all restaurants in LA County, all food vendors, et cetera. So they must have email lists or maybe they do a mailing, but I've never been able to get an answer out of anyone.
I mean, it seems crazy to me that the onus is really on us as consumers to inform restaurants, no, you're not supposed to be using styrofoam takeout containers anymore.
I totally agree. If you know anybody that you think could apply political pressure to the county, just to say, well, tell us what you're doing. You know, how often do you send reminders if you do about AB 619? Because I agree, as a consumer, why would they believe me? Now, I often take my reusable clamshell. I've got one of these from Ozy, you know, with me. And I've actually been turned down once when I said the law allows me to bring this in here. But none of the restaurants ever knew anything about it. So I would just say if you can, you know, appeal to your council members to see if they can talk to the county. County has a sustainability office, and I reached out to them several times and said, can you talk to your health agency? I just didn't get anywhere with that.
And is it the city or the county that we
County.
should be? It's the county that we should
Yeah.
be talking to.
Yeah, LA City does not have its own health agency. The county is the health agency for most cities around here.
Okay, interesting. So it's at the county level that we need them to do
Right.
more outreach to the restaurants.
Right.
Got it. Kathy is asking, is there a phone number or an email to report restaurant violations?
Yeah, you can, for Los Angeles, you can call our call center. Let me see, it's 1-800-773-2489. Let me put that in the chat.
Yeah.
That takes you to our call center and they will forward the message. When I was running that program, basically we sent a reminder letter to a restaurant that was in violation, and typically that took care of the problem.
Yes, I mean, I feel like a lot of the problem, it isn't that they're, you know, deliberately flouting laws.
No,
It's just
no.
that they don't even know that that's a rule.
Right, right.
Okay, so that would get a letter sent to a restaurant.
Well, I would get forwarded to Paul Cobian, who's in the same division with me doing the plastics now. And he's got staff that will reach out to the restaurants.
Okay, that's good to know. And what information would we need to include? Just the name of the restaurant?
The address if you can, and probably the date when you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so everyone kind of put that in your phone, save it as, you know, this is the number you call when you're eating at a restaurant and you find that they're, you know, using banned products.
Right, right. I tell you, there's a very famous bakery around here that just is knowingly violating all this. I'm not going to say the name, but it's a great bakery. They've got 2 big locations, but they're just kind of, we're going to continue using polystyrene.
That is disappointing. I mean, maybe I'm optimistic in saying mostly it's that they don't know. Maybe they do know and they don't care.
There is a cost differential. I will absolutely guarantee you that. Polystyrene used to be the cheapest stuff out there, you know, and it retains heat. It doesn't leak. I understand why the restaurants liked it, but you know, it's poison. So almost every city now has a guide out there about alternatives for polystyrene, and a lot of them have already made the switch. So we know it can be done. But again, go with AB 619. Use your customers' containers. Save yourself, you know, 10 cents.
Yes. So for those who weren't at our waste action meeting, you know, a few months ago, this was something that we suggested, that you take one of your reusable shopping bags, which presumably you already have in your car, and you put a couple containers in it. And then you just bring that into the restaurant when you go in to eat, just like you're bringing, you know, your purse, if you're carrying a purse, or anything else. So you bring your reusable bag that has your reusable containers in it. And then if you want to take food to go, you pack it up yourself. Great way to reduce the number of containers coming into your house, which can feel overwhelming if you eat out a lot.
Oh, right. It's just a new habit. I mean, it took me probably 6 months before after I unpacked my reusable bag, put my bag back on the door handle instead of having to buy a new one at the store the next time. So it really, most of this is habits, I think. I'm doing a lot of our convenience-driven habits that we've acquired over the years.
Yes. And I really had to, you know, think about how to remember that. I got a cuter, you know, reusable bag that, you know, something cute that I would feel comfortable carrying into a restaurant, right? So it's, a cute reusable bag with my containers in it, that again, just lives in the car, and I replace the containers as they get used. All right, next topic. Kirsten is asking, what happens to food waste that gets collected? So can you walk us through sort of the life cycle of our green bin
Sure.
when it gets collected?
We're collecting food waste through the recycler. From some businesses, we're collecting food waste curbside, and your curbside, you're mixing green waste, grass clippings, branches with food waste. So the food waste goes to Sanitation's transfer station, which is a little east of downtown. And all those materials get mixed, the residential stream, the commercial stream, I'm sorry, not the commercial stream, and then food waste, for example, from my pilot projects. Then it is all taken to a private processor, Recology, that we have under contract. And they are the ones that process it into compost.
And where does that happen? Is it actually in LA or is it far away?
No, I think Recology is in Victorville or thereabouts, if I'm not mistaken. So it's about a 90-mile, 100-mile trip. We don't really have any really close processors. We've got some stuff in Ventura. They're hard to permit.
So I know that before food waste was part of kind of the green bin stream, green bins were being processed and composted here in LA at multiple sites. There's Lopez Canyon, there's the Griffith Park
Right.
composting.
Right.
So is it going to be possible for those facilities to handle more of the waste now that it's including food waste in the green bin?
The problem with Lopez is there are a lot of opposition. I've been told there's council opposition to adding food waste out there. They're doing some pilot projects, but I think there's a real significant concern from the neighborhood about odors if food waste is involved. So I think they're doing small scale things. I don't know yet that they're permitted for it, because certainly it would make more sense just to haul it to Lopez than to haul it elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really love the idea that we're trucking our waste 90
Exactly.
miles away in, gas
Exactly.
large trucks to do this when, there are facilities here in LA
Oh,
for
yeah.
composting.
And I don't know if there was a gentleman that was running food service at the Greek Theater a couple years ago who was very into food waste recycling, and he got a dehydrator. And he looked at their meals, he would look in the trash, and he would see a lot of inch-long segments left out of hot dogs, etc. So he sized down the food when he saw a lot of that particular food was getting wasted. Then they used a dehydrator on site, and then the output they used as a fertilizer in their garden. So it can be done. That's what I would like to see, is more local processing, with big facilities, keep it local, try different equipment. It's not a fully composted product when it comes out of the dehydrators, but have a small scale compost, pile on site, see what can be done with this stuff. Because I agree, long distance hauling, it's you want to make this stuff as hyper local as you possibly can.
Yeah, that's really what we'd like to see. How do you think we influence that? I mean, you said odors are the main source of opposition.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a misconception on a lot of people's part. I would highly recommend, I will send you the contact. The company that manages this is BioNovo dehydrator equipment. I will send you the contact. He works with a lot of studios. He has a mobile dehydrator about the size of a refrigerator that he hauls to events and he hauls to studios, grinds the food. And I've been to his facility and there was absolutely no odor in the maybe 20 by 30 foot room where two of the dehydrators were, and they were full of the output material. So I think there's a misconception that there's going to be horrific odors, and there necessarily won't be. Because if you manage it properly, you want to let things sit so they start becoming putrescible. You want to manage, turn the stuff over quickly. So, but I would encourage city council money for buying equipment and doing all sorts of different pilot projects. Yet we need the practical experience, and we need to stop hauling things long distance, especially with our landfills nearing capacity. I mean, chances are we not have to haul trash. So let's haul what we only absolutely have to haul. But I would encourage council, just buy one of everything. there are lots of likely partners out there that would look into this. Disney, even if it's not in LA proper, Disney's done a lot of environmental initiatives. That's what I would do, is test out all the major food processing equipment and see what works best.
All right, so funding for pilot projects for
Yeah,
waste should be on our radar.
yeah, exactly.
So another question from
Mhm.
Terry, and this is something that comes up often. Does LA San accept fiberware and bioplastics in the organics collection bin?
Okay, fiberware, meaning all plant-based fiber, paper-based, pulped like egg cartons. If it doesn't have a coating, we accept it. Usually you will see on the packaging, it might say lined with PLA or something else, which is a bioplastic. Those bioplastics, you can sort it out, but composters just don't like to deal with that stuff. Now, bioplastics, in my mind, are just greenwashing. They're plant derived, but not necessarily 100% plant derived. But to make like a spoon or a bioplastic cup, you're adding a hardener to it. So if those things get littered, they behave just like conventional plastic-based products. So we don't take bioplastics. I think a couple companies up north may take them, but when you think about it, if you're taking in grass clippings and paper-based fiberware, then you've got these bioplastic products that break down at a completely different rate. So you'd have to separate them at the processing facility and send the fast processing stuff here, the bioplastics here, and that's just not economically viable to do that. So bioplastics sound good because they're plant derived, but in my mind, they're still single-use disposable, and they do contaminate traditional recycling streams. So I say stay away from them.
Yeah, that's an important message, because I think a lot of people still see, they see like a film plastic bag at Trader Joe's that says compostable.
Right.
And they're thinking, oh, well, it's compostable, I'm going to put it in the green bin.
Right.
But what you're saying is that those items cannot go in the green bin.
They really shouldn't, because we're testing some of them, but they just don't break down at the same rate as everything else. And I think in my mind, it's just cleaner to keep purely organic materials separated from things that are, have any fossil fuel in them at all.
Have your tests found any compostable materials that do break down acceptably, or is it all just a hard no?
I think it's still in the testing process. I ask about this episodically and I haven't heard. So I would just say,
I ask episodically too. That's why I'm asking you. Any update?
Yeah. There are those cotton produce bags, just go, or use paper bags if you can for, food waste. But it's hard to break the plastics habit. I get it. I mean, is there really an alternative to Ziploc bags? I don't know, but.
All right, we have a question from Sarai, who is asking who enforces the SB 54 fines for restaurants that are in violation. Are the fines being enforced? Because we knew that there was talk of, pretty hefty fines for SB 54.
Right. That has not yet happened. All that is still all being worked out, SB 54, and they have to set up those pros, which are going to be organizations that will verify and look at compliance. They're going to be third-party groups overseeing the compliance and determining if recycling rates are being achieved by different products. So we're talking, is it 2028 or 2032 is the very first compliance date for SB 54. So we're years away.
All right, so slow moving transition
Yeah,
here.
I actually don't know who would assess the fines, honestly.
Perhaps that's to be determined.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Another question, is anyone thinking about biodigesting food waste?
Yes, the Beverly Hills Hotel I was talking about before had a biodigester, had some problems with it. That's the only one I know of. I've not had direct experience with any others, but again, I would say buy one, with.
Is it something that LA San is considering adding to any of the local facilities?
No, not at this point. We just collect this stuff and then it gets consolidated and hauled somewhere. But yeah, it makes complete sense. I would say test a biodigester, put one up at Lopez or something where,
Okay. Has anyone penciled out the difference in the carbon footprint of composted food waste versus landfilled food waste? Do you have a good sense of that?
I don't, but there is a state law, SB 1383, that says we have to keep organics out of landfills. So, and the reason being, when you put organics in landfills, they generate methane, which is, you all know, is one of the more potent of greenhouse gases. So, you know, a landfill is a perfect place just for that stuff to cook and generate methane. So we don't really have a choice now. We have to keep organics out of landfills.
All right. Here's a problem I've heard before. I'm seeing a problem with fruit flies, bugs, and larvae in my apartment building's organics barrel.
No.
Guidance to help avoid. Should we be bagging food scraps? People always want to bag the food scraps when they go in the green bin so that, you know, doesn't get too messy.
LA does not want the food waste bagged. Other cities do. What I've been told, and let me see if I get some more information from somebody who's more knowledgeable, but is to bury your food waste in the middle of the bin and put green waste on top of it. But let me see if there are any other tricks that I can find out about. But that's what I've been told.
And that's probably hard for apartment building living because you don't necessarily have green waste handy.
Right. Or one person in charge of the bin to make sure it gets stacked that way. So yeah, let me see. I don't know if there's anything, you know, for the bins we have in our offices, we put those little charcoal odor control things on them, but I don't think those handle fruit flies at all. So let me see if there's something you can toss in there, like diatomaceous earth. I don't know, but I'll see what I can find out.
All right, I have another question. How does LA San interact with LAUSD in terms of collecting from schools? And what about food waste at schools?
Okay. LAUSD has a contract, I think it's still with Republic Industries, one of the franchised haulers. So Republic is responsible for providing all the services to LAUSD: trash, blue bin recycling, and green bin organics. And I don't get the figures for recycled tonnage, so I don't know how that's going. If you've got a child in LAUSD, I would ask, you know, see if you could stop by. I've heard that some schools are now allowing share tables, which a decade ago they wouldn't, but now, like if a child was given an apple for lunch and they don't want it, they can put that apple on the share table and someone else can take it, which is great. I don't know how widespread that is, but for years, LAUSD just said no, but finally they've come around to that, so.
Yeah, they are doing that at my kids' schools, I know, so that's incredibly helpful for just cutting down on the amount that goes straight to the trash, right?
Exactly. Milk, I was told Republic at one school trained the children to take their little milk cartons, walk to the school kitchen and dump the milk down the drain because none of the children were drinking any of the milk.
Have I missed anyone's question in the chat? I've been scrolling as we go, but if you have another question, you know, nudge me in the chat so that I make sure I get. But I'm seeing a lot of, you know, concern about the fact that, you know, grocery stores, restaurants, they're all still promoting these, you know, green plastics.
I know.
And I feel like there's a lot of misunderstanding just in the general population about this. And I'm wondering if, you know, LA San is planning more education campaigns to help people understand that compostable doesn't mean goes in the green bin.
I don't know. I've not heard of any, but frankly, I wish this would be addressed at the state level. Maybe something to take up with Nick Schultz, was just recently elected. I just still see products around that I'm shocked that California allows to be sold, or allows to be sold with, you know, certain claims on them, and particularly the bags. So I've not heard of anything. We typically will advise you to use this instead of that, but we don't get into brand names or things of that sort. But let me check back and see if they've tested anything that you can buy, say, to a Ralph or Vons. It's readily available, and see if they've done composting tests on that.
Yeah, and Rhonda's saying maybe the LA Times could run a lifestyle story on these issues that includes best practices. Maybe LA San could work together to, you know, put together, you know, a public campaign with LA Times.
We did, was it last year or a year and a half ago? They came out actually with a separate edition. It was about 30 pages long. It was not quite what we were anticipating. It just didn't have as many the details that we were expecting, but I think it's a great idea. There are a couple of reporters there. Suzanne Rust is one of the environmental reporters, and Haley Smith, I think, is another one. I would say email them if you've got suggestions. But yeah, like a practical, when you go to the store, buy this, don't buy that, would be very helpful.
Yeah, I feel like people really need clearer guidelines because even people who are trying very hard to do the right thing
Yeah,
just don't know like what the rules are and what the best
right.
really
Well,
is.
yeah, you don't. Compostable, what does that really mean? You know, I'd be hard pressed to come up with a good definition. Craig probably could, but would be.
Yeah. April wants to confirm, so we only can recycle plastics 1, 2, and 5. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. But plastic film, multi-layer plastics, none
No,
of that
none of
goes
that.
in the blue bin.
Right, like your potato chip bag, I don't even know if those are plastic, metallicized plastic, I don't even know what those are. All those chip bags, none of that. Some are laminated.
Yes.
Yeah, only 1, 2, and 5 plastics have any markets these days.
Okay, so for the film plastic and the multi-layer bags, those still have to get picked up by Ridwell. If you have Ridwell service, they take those and they ship the multi-layer plastics off to Trex to be remade into plastic decking.
Okay,
So and the film plastic gets
right.
made into like fake rocks for the garden and things
Okay.
like that. So Ridwell will take those items, but not LA San.
Question, I got a postcard recently from Ridwell because they let you commingle all the plastics together, right?
Well,
Different
they ask the user to separate them into bags. So when you sign
Oh,
up for Ridwell service, they drop off
okay,
this box and you get, 5 different
okay.
cloth bags, and then you put, all your multi-layer plastics in the one that says
Okay,
multi-layer and all your plastic films into the one that says plastics. And then,
okay,
the light bulbs and batteries and
right,
other items in separate bags. So the user does the separating on
okay.
their end.
Well, that makes me much more confident about them because it couldn't have been economical for them to get giant loads of commingled plastics, then have to separate them before they process them. So the customer does. Okay.
Right. And we did tour the Ridwell processing facility a few months back.
Okay.
And they are, unloading all those bags by hand. So it is a person who kind of, dumps a bag and just makes sure that it really is, multi-layer plastics and not something random. So there's sort of some eyes on it, but the bulk of the sorting is done by the user.
Okay. Where is the facility? Texas? Did you go there? Or they have one
No,
here?
no, no. It's in Van Nuys.
Oh, okay.
Big
Not really.
warehouse in Van Nuys. They
Oh,
walked us through the whole thing. It was really
oh,
fun.
good to know. I have very little info about them. So
Another question was, will there ever be styrofoam recycling? Is styrofoam at all recyclable?
everything's technically recyclable. I saw a company in Portland, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago. They took polystyrene for recycling, but think about it. If you toss polystyrene into your blue bin, it's a plate, let's say you put in, that stuff gets crushed inside the bin or inside the truck. So once it gets to the landfill or wherever it's going, it's little tiny pieces that are almost impossible to collect. The company I saw recycling styrofoam had sources where it was separated. One was like an appliance company, and they use styrofoam for insulation, like in fridges or whatever. So they would send their trimmings to this company. Another was a school lunch program. So the styrofoam was a little dirty, but it was just the styrofoam. And then they also got styrofoam packing cases from farmers. And they did it pyrolysis. It was in a tank. And so they took the styrofoam down to a liquid level, and then they turned it into fuel. But unless your styrofoam comes in source separated like that, it's almost impossible.
Wow. Okay. Well, better to stay away from the
Yeah.
styrofoam entirely.
Right.
If there's anyone on the call who isn't signed up for Ridwell and would like to be, when we toured the facility, whoops, I did that wrong. They gave us a special sign up link that gets you your first month free. So I'm gonna put that in the chat here. It should still be active. If you
Right.
sign up with that Get Ridwell that has the SFVCR. At the end of it, you should be able to sign up and get a trial month free so that you can try it out. And they've been expanding their zones. So I know they've gotten further out than they were when we toured the facility
Right.
4 months ago or whatever that was in October.
That's great. Okay.
All right, under SB 1046, grocery stores must offer compostable or recyclable paper produce bags.
Hmm.
Maybe we should work towards shifting towards recycled paper instead of compostable plastics.
Right.
Yeah, that would definitely be a good one. And maybe that is going to have to come from consumer pressure, asking our grocery stores to provide the paper produce bags instead of what they call compostable plastic that we know really isn't.
I thought Craig, can you confirm? I thought the pre-check plastic bags at stores were going away in January. Did they go away or is that next year? What they're calling pre-check bags, which are plastic bags before.
Yeah, those are supposed to be gone.
Yeah,
The grocery store checkout plastic bags, the thicker plastic ones, those are supposed to be gone this year, right?
Yeah, and
So I hope people are not seeing those in the stores anymore. And if you are, let's report them.
Karen,
it's 20,
it goes into effect 2026.
Oh, there's one more year. Okay.
Well, I encourage stores to carry cotton produce bags. I've seen, was it Trader Joe's, I think now has those in one store at least. Where they sell them.
Yes. I've definitely seen them at Trader Joe's, not sure where else. Sprouts, I think.
Right.
Okay. Any last questions before we wrap this up? We've kept Jennifer for pretty much all. I told her she'd be done at 8:15, so you have 4 minutes to ask your final question, anybody.
I'm good.
But this has been super informative. It's always worth kind of reminding ourselves what's out there, what's coming, what's new, what we should be doing. But, you know, I think a lot of the answer is that we also, as consumers, need to be more proactive in asking stores that we frequent to, you know, give us the options that we want to use, to phase out the options that we don't want to use, and to be aware that okay, we've got one more. Can you clarify if compostable produce bags can be placed in the green waste bin? And the answer
No,
is
not
no.
now in Los Angeles.
No, not in Los Angeles, not with LA San.
So they're a black bin item at this point, but reuse them as much as you can.
Yeah, and the thing I want to add is that we checked with Ridwell as well, and they will not take those compostable plastic bags either because they break down too quickly. So remember, what they're doing is they're, you know, repurposing these items into hard plastic.
Right.
And, you know, outdoor use. So they don't actually want the kind of plastic that breaks down too quickly. So compostable, quote unquote, plastic bags are kind of the worst of both worlds because they aren't actually able to go in your compost bin, but they also can't be sent to like a plastics recycler like Goodwill that will reprocess them because they do break down more quickly than regular plastic. So honestly, I would say avoid compostable plastic bags at all costs because that's straight into the black bin.
That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Did not know.
Foam cycle in Connecticut. I'm gonna have to look into that one, Allison. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, and yes, just to remind everyone, all expanded polystyrene as of January 1st of this year is illegal to sell in the state of California. You should not be seeing styrofoam out there in the world. If you see it in the wild, there's a problem.
Yeah, smart and final. I go through grocery stores and check, and although they've now got a whole supply of fiber-based compostables too, so they're serving both worlds.
All right. We're going to go ahead, unspotlight ourselves, Diana, and ask you all to just unmute for a moment and give Jennifer a round of applause and thanks. We really appreciate her taking the time tonight.
Jennifer,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Really
so helpful to
appreciate
bounce
it.
this off of people, you know, that are interested in it. But seriously, contact your council members. I think they would really like to hear about the organics, and we've got to get away from the old fashioned, put it in a bin, put it in a truck, drive it somewhere out there. We've got to get away from that approach. So thank you. I really appreciate the invitation. Nice seeing all of you. Night.
Agreed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.